There's a teaching from the Hindu tradition about the nature of reality, and they call it Indra's net. And you have to sort of imagine an infinite lattice stretching in all directions. No beginning, no end. And at every junction in that net is a jewel, and there's an infinite number of jewels. And within each jewel, every other jewel is perfectly reflected. All of them, simultaneously, forever. A hologram of love. Isn't that beautiful? And here's what I want to feel into with you today, this relationship between those jewels, because it's not neutral. It isn't cold. Each jewel doesn't just reflect the others, they long for each other as well, in a way that almost no word in our language can capture, except perhaps the word romance. There's this romance between those jewels. Romance with a capital R. When I first wrote about the Gene Keys, and I wrote Gene Key 55, I gave its name for this higher consciousness, for the Siddhi, as I call them. I gave it the word freedom, and I gave the same name for the gift. And these words, that's not a wrong word. It was pointing at something really real. The ending of the victim consciousness, the dragonfly lifting out of the dark water into the open air, and all of that's true. But the word freedom also is quite problematic because it implies sometimes freedom from, something to escape, something to leave behind, something to transcend. And at the level of the gift, that's true. The Siddhi, which is the far, it seems something far distant, but actually it's a deep thing inside us. It's not the direction of travel. It's what you discover when you find home inside yourself. And what you discover when you find home inside yourself, it's the same thing that any genuine mystic has ever discovered. It's not escape. It's recognition. Recognition that love lives inside you. And that isn't only freedom. That's also romance. And I mean it, again, in a different way from what most people understand. We've kind of forgotten the meaning of this word. Romance, it's not about flowers and candlelight. It with a capital R, it comes from the medieval word, roman, the poems that were written, not in the language of the church in the Middle Ages, but in everyday language of the people, in the fields, about the body. And so romance, these poems, these love poems, were about the body, were about, ordinary life and living, in being in the world, being ordinary, not getting away from it. If you think of like Romeo and Juliet, two people taken over by love that was larger than both of them, or any tragedy, any good romantic tragedy, that tragedy, that love is sometimes impossible to kind of bring into a human form. The deepest love sometimes is the most sacred love. No one who's ever heard those ancient stories, can doubt that love in its pure form is sacred. But that's not, only what romance is about. It's not about happy endings. The love that is so full doesn't even require, a perfect ending. Tragedy can't even diminish it. Death can't diminish it. And in a way, that's what the cosmos is doing. It's doing that through us. It's not trying to make things comfortable. It's trying to make things real. And I want to situate this conversation, it's not really a conversation, this monologue, within something larger. Many of you will know the teaching around 2027, this prediction that there's a fundamental shift that will sweep through, humanity, through the solar plexus system, around that year, and will bring about an age of change that may go on for centuries, right? It's just the beginning of something. And that was the teaching from Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design. And my understanding of the solar plexus is maybe a bit different, because I don't feel it as a center. It's a system. It's like a hologram, actually, of the solar system. And the awareness that sits behind it is also behind the mind. So it's not in one area of the body. It's everywhere in our being. It's older than the mind, this awareness. It's deeper than thought. It knows things through resonance rather than through reason. And it is this deep belly intelligence. And it is rising in humanity right now. I think as we slow down, as we really learn to slow down again, we will come back into that place inside us. For thousands of years, our spirituality has been a kind of spirituality of ascent, up and out and alone. Transcend the body, transcend the desire, the lonely Buddha, the outcast Christ, nirvana, escaping samsara. And I really want to put the brakes on that. It's like that spirituality is done with us. What's coming now with this new mutation is a spirituality of descent, of incarnation, down and in and together. That's very different. That's building nirvana inside the beloved, inside samsara. That's like embracing the wound, the rage, the polarization. Look at the world today. Look at the fracturing, the wound of victimhood, the shadow of Jinky 55, written across the headlines every day. And I want to say that doesn't have to be seen as evidence of humanity failing, but it might be evidence of this mutation, what it looks like from the inside. Because the solar plexus of our species is convulsing. Ancient material is rising, grief and rage and ancestral trauma, and it is not rising quietly. The dragonfly does not glide quietly, peacefully from the water to the air. It's kind of a violent emergence. The old skin has to crack open. So the road to collective awakening runs directly through the collective wound. And this isn't a teaching about a future human who's just transcended all difficulty and is love and light. This is a teaching about the human right now, gritty, unfinished, hurting, still in the process of healing the heart, but willing to let the love be greater than the fear. Really, that's it. That should be enough for us. And I want to bring this home into the body, into your breath, into this ordinary moment of our lives. You can probably hear right now, I'm overcoming an illness. And sometimes those illnesses and difficulties in our lives are where the deepest romance lies. They're concealing something beautiful underneath, if we really trust them. So if we really allow ourselves to feel, into the simple fact of our existence, something called us into being, that you're here, alive, listening to this, in this particular moment, in this particular incredible time. There's something powerful responding to that feeling, something vast, leaning from the cosmos towards you. And it's romance. And I wrote this in the original transmission of Jinky 55, 20 years ago. You are alive at a deeply romantic moment. I had no idea what I was really saying when I wrote that. I think I'm beginning to have a feeling now, because we're not here to escape from anything. We're not here to transcend. We're here to incarnate more fully, more fearlessly, with more love and more tenderness than any human beings before us. It's why I tease people when I hear them say sometimes, this is my last incarnation. I'm like, really? Wow, that's interesting. What an interesting time to choose to go. Just before the party, you get 50,000 incarnations struggling up the mountain. You get just before the peak and you're going to go now? Don't you want to see what this is all, where it's all been going? Because that's where we are. We're cresting a peak. and we're going to see something completely new on the other side, and it's not so far away. In evolutionary terms, the next 100 years is going to show massive shifts in our consciousness. We can map that decade by decade, but really that's what we're looking at. We are inside a love story. Indra's net is a love story. And we, each of us, is one of those jewels. You're the lover. The universe is the beloved, or the other way around, if you like. And the beloved and the lover come into merging, beautiful merging, and something is revealed that wasn't there. It just is revealed through that relationship, through that romantic coming together. And what's revealed is love, not as a teaching, not as some abstract kind of philosophy, as a really known, embodied, somatic experience. That is what I am. That is the purpose of all of it. That love. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you find this an enjoyable, inspiring shift in the Gene Keys framework, and lots of things to contemplate. And I look forward to hearing your contemplations as well. So much love and blessings.